Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Harmon Islamic Studies Circle, the HISC Seerah session 91. Inshallah, we're going to be doing the start of the Battle of Badr today. So we've been talking about a lot of the preparation up until the start of the battle. And just again, very quick contextualization. Last week, we talked about how the Muslims were preparing for the battle, how they got confirmation, first-hand or second-hand account confirmation from the Prophet ﷺ that there was an army, it's not just the caravan, and then they got first-hand information from two people they captured. The Prophet ﷺ then seeks counsel of 313 plus, and three of the Muhajirs stood up and said, we support you, and then he asked again, and then Suath from the Ansar said, we're going to support you. Then the Prophet ﷺ was very happy with that. Then he assigned them different tasks. They got to the plain of Badr, and then they were setting up camp, and one of the Sahabi said to camp in front of the wells, not behind the wells, so rather than camping on the corner of the battlefield, they were sort of midpoint or just after midpoint in front of the wells. The Quraish, they came again themselves late at night, and we sort of finished with the Prophet ﷺ, where it was raining. The Muslims took a bit of shelter from the rain, and Prophet ﷺ was all night in prayer. So again, the Muslim army, 313 plus a few, sort of 61 from the Aus, 107 from the Khazraj, and sort of between 82 and 86 from the Muhajir. They only had 2 horses. We talked about that before. And the leaders of the different flanks, there was Ali ibn Talib in front of the Muhajir, and Sa'd ibn Mu'adh in front of the Ansar. Then Az-Zubair with one of the horses was on the right flank, and then Al-Miqdad on the other, the horse on the left flank, and at the back was Qais bin Abi Sa'sa, and Prophet was the overall in charge. On the Quraish side, there are over 100 horses, 600 suits of armor, over around about 1,000 fighting men, well over 500 camels, and they even brought some entertainment, some singing girls. Again, they weren't necessarily expecting to fight, not all of them were anyway. And Allah talks about this, where the Prophet ﷺ was unprepared for war. The Quraysh were prepared for war but didn't want to fight war. And then Surah Al-Anfal, Allah says in translation, and remember when you were on the near side of the valley and they were on the farther side, and the caravan was lower in position than you. If you had made an appointment to meet, you would have missed that appointment, but it was so that Allah might accomplish a matter which has already been destined. Those that perish through disbelief would perish upon evidence, and those who lived in faith would live upon evidence, and indeed Allah is hearing and knowing. So essentially, what one of the interpretations of that is that even if they had planned the war, that the Quraysh and the Muslims had planned to meet and have this battle, it wouldn't have happened. The Prophet ﷺ didn't want to fight, he wanted the caravan. The Muslims didn't want to fight, they wanted the caravan. The Quraysh, they wanted to protect the caravan, they didn't want to fight. The caravan was safe. Most of the Quraysh didn't want to fight, they wanted to go back. So there was a lot of feeling on both sides not to fight, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala engineered it in such a way that they had to meet on the battlefield. Even Abu Sufyan was telling them, withdraw, no need to fight, the caravan is safe. The raison d'etre for the army had gone, but Allah wanted to make this a decisive battle between the Muslims and the Quraysh. one that would, as we can obviously see, is written down in the annals of history as a momentous day, because this was the event, the single day which essentially cleared the leadership of the Quraysh, right? Apart from Abu Sufyan and Abu Lahab, all of the others, senior most leaders, perished. And we'll talk about Abu Lahab in a few weeks, and obviously Abu Sufyan later on. He has still an important part to play in the Seerah. So this, even the Quraysh, when they were setting up or getting ready for Badr, their intention was just to be boastful. They wanted to sing and they wanted to celebrate, have a festival. They didn't expect any fighting. So that all of these things were going on, but Allah, as I say, engineered it. This is the qadr of Allah, such that the small party of Muslims was going to meet the well-equipped party of the Quraysh, and the Muslims would be so one-sidedly victorious. So we'll come on to that, inshallah. So we talked last time about how the Muslims prepared, and got until the night before. And then we briefly talked about the Quraysh arriving on the plains. It was dark. They didn't have a good sense of how many Muslims they would be facing. And they'd sent one of their leading scouts from their sort of camp, and they'd camped at a place called al-Udwad al-Quswa. They'd sent one of their top scouts, Umayr ibn Wahab al-Jumahi, to get an estimation of the Muslim army, and he came back saying there are about 300, give or take a few. But these are young men of Yathrib, and I see death in their eyes. They will inflict, for each one of them you kill, they're going to kill one of you. Is it going to be worth it? You're killing your own kith and kin, right? And if 300 of you die, because you're going to kill 300 of them, it's so one-sided, what pleasure will you gain in that? Because these are your own flesh and blood, and you will have to deal with your own tribal mess essentially when you get back to Makkah, because this goes against international law. This is the established law of Arabia, what we would sort of term international law, where you don't kill your brothers, you don't kill your family, you don't kill your tribe. And this is intertribal warfare, completely unheard of. And he's saying, look, it's a no-win situation. Even if you technically win by defeating the army, you've still lost, because you're going against your own values. And going against your own values, what will the other people whose family you've murdered, what will they think of you? And what will the other Arab tribes think of us? We will lose the moral high ground in Arabia. So it's a lose-lose, he's saying. And then Abu Jahal, obviously, he says, look, we didn't ask for your opinion. And again, we talked previously about other senior leaders, Umayyah bin Khalaf and Utbah ibn Rabbiyah, not wanting to fight, and Abu Jahal goading them into fight. So we talked again about how it rained in the night, and the sky, rain from the sky, dampened the ground on the Muslim side of the plain, so it was soft, and it had, the dusty ground, it made their feet firm. Whereas on the Quraishi side, the same rain was more of a downpour, and that caused their ground to be muddy and sticky, and they couldn't walk so easily. Their camp would get stuck. So again, it's a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he's there's differential rain, and it's part of demoralizing the Quraishi side. So they were sort of muddy and sticky, and again when they woke up, they're in a different state of mind. Whereas the Muslims, they'd got there early, they'd rested, they'd even fallen asleep and Allah refers to this, how He caused them all to sleep, and they woke up fresh. They'd even had a spiritual bath because of the rain, where they felt as if they'd been cleansed because of the rain. So a lot of blessings on the Muslim side, and again significant angst on the non-Muslim side. So again, amongst the Quraysh, there were other people in the Stop the War coalition there. It wasn't just the scout. And again, we've heard before how people didn't want to fight. They're not here to fight. They're just protecting the army. So another person who wanted to stop the fight for similar reasons of tribalism that we've talked before was Hakim ibn Hizzam. Now, Hakim's son is Hizzam. He was a Muslim, and he was on the Muslim side. So Hakim ibn Hizzam is the father. So the son is actually called Hizzam ibn Hakim ibn Hizzam. So the son and the grandfather have the same first name. So Hakim ibn Hizzam, he wanted to stop the fight. So he went to Utbah ibn Rabbiyah, and who he knew would be sympathetic. Because Utbah, again, from the outset, he was one of the senior leaders, saying, "Look, there's no point in fighting." And he was a man of wise counsel, and he could turn the tide. So he goes to Utbah and he goes, "Look, why don't you offer to pay the blood money for the death of Hadhrami?" Now, Hadhrami was the chap that was killed in the Seerah of Nakhla, where Abdullah ibn Jahsh, they pounced on the caravan and took a couple of prisoners and brought back that caravan, and that was the one that was in the end of the sacred month of Rajab, just before the caravan got into Makkah, and then initially the Prophet wouldn't take the war booty, but revelation came saying that what the Quraish do is far worse than causing bloodshed in the 4 holy months. So Utbah was asked by Hakim, "Why don't you pay the blood money on behalf?" Because part of the reason of the fight, it's not just to protect the caravan. That reason is gone. Now it's bloodlust. They want to avenge the death of Hadhrami, and the relatives of Hadhrami are chanting Hadhrami, Hadhrami, Hadhrami. So why don't you pay the blood money? So that'll stop the reason for a lot of the chanting and sort of riling up the army. So Utbah says, "Okay, fine. If that's what's going to prevent bloodshed, I will pay the blood money." Okay, and so he went to the relatives of Hadhrami, and he said, I will give the money, so stop chanting his name. So we're not going to fight in his name. Don't take his name in vain. I will sort it out. And obviously 100 camels is a lot of money, but Utbah being quite senior, and he was happy to give that. As he's talking to the relatives, he goes, "Look, if anyone accuses you of cowardice, as in the only reason you're stopping the fight is because you're cowards, then mention my name. I will take the blame." So he says, if someone accuses you of cowardice, mention my name and say that I was the one who became scared. Go ahead and say that, even though you know I'm not a coward. By Allah, if you defeat this man, you will kill your own blood. Similar to what the other chap said. Your own father, your brother, etc. How would you like it if you are amongst the murderers of your brother and your father? So again, he's talking about tribalism as his main focus point. It's not a higher value. It is pure Jahiliyyah tribalism, the same tribalism that Abu Talib had. So he says, look, you kill these guys, you're going to be walking amongst the murderers, and their family are going to be mingling with you. It's a lose-lose situation. And then he goes on to say, look, blame me, I'm your coward. Let us return and leave Muhammad and his companions to the rest of the Arabs. We know he's after power and domination. He wants to control. He wants to rule for the sake of Allah. So let us go back, leave Muhammad and his companions to the rest of the Arabs. If they overcome him, then that's what you want. You get your desired outcome. If they, repel him or kill him, then, saves you that pain. And if it's the other case, as in Muhammad overcomes the other Arabs, then surely his honor is our honor as well, and we will have an excuse for him to forgive us. Okay, so Utbah, he's talking reason, talking quite sensible and good reason. So he's on his red camel, and he's marching up and down the lines of the family of Hadhrami, and he's invoking tribalism. He's invoking their bonds and trying to stop the war. This is his own sort of stop the war coalition, and that's essentially what was happening. The tide was turning, and we'll come back onto this. But the Prophet ﷺ, he sees Utbah on his red camel, going and talking to the people, and he's got revelation, from Jibreel or from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that whatever this person is saying is there is benefit in it. So then he calls out to Ali, says, ask Hamzah, find out what this chap is saying, because there is good in what he is saying, and surely if the people were to follow him, that would be in their benefit. So obviously what Prophet is saying is, this chap is trying to stop the war. If the people listen to him, even if it's for reasons of tribalism, jahiliyyah, if they stop the war, there is benefit in it for them, as in they don't die. They get a chance to, become Muslims later on. So there's genuine benefit in them if they listen to him, even if they do it for the wrong reasons. They do it for the reasons of jahiliyyah. Okay, and again, Allah's ensured that we have this narration for us, because he said to the Prophet that this chap is saying something which is useful, and obviously he goes and he then instructs his Sahabi to find out what it is, and hence we have it recorded as a significant event. So anyway, we'll come back onto that later on. So he's saying, stop fighting, I'll pay the blood money, call me a coward, let's all call the whole thing off. If the other Arabs sort him out, then that's what we want. If he becomes victorious, then he's a Quraishi, he's one of us. We are going to be the winners anyway, and should he then overcome us in Makkah, he will forgive us, because he'll recognize what we did on this day. So then Hakim ibn Hizzam, he's happy. He's convinced Utbah. The family are getting convinced. So he rushes over to Abu Jahal, and he says, look, Utbah has agreed to pay the blood money, so let's stop this war. Let's stop it now. So Abu Jahal, because he's just riled up. He's got bloodlust. He just wants to defeat Muhammad. He can't see anything else. He's just focused. He's almost, paranoid beyond belief. That his singular goal is his own honor and to defeat and destroy Muhammad. He doesn't see the sense in anything else, and everything he does is focused around destroying his enemy. And that's, So he's not there listening to reason, and he is, as Prophet says, when at the end of the Battle of Badr, he is the Pharaoh of his people. He's like the Pharaoh. In fact, he's probably worse than Pharaoh, because Pharaoh did see the light right at the end, and we'll talk about how Abu Jahl dies, inshallah, next time or the time after. So anyway, Hakim goes to Abu Jahl and gets, look, Utbah's agreed. So Abu Jahl then, he mocks Hakim and said, look, you now turned into a messenger. You're a slave now. So Hakim said, look, no, it's not I'm his errand boy. I agree with this message. I don't want bloodshed. Let's go back. Let's call it a truce. Okay. So then Abu Jahl, he sees that the tide is turning and people are working against him. So then he goes not just to the family of al-Hadhrami, the tribe. He goes to the blood brother of Hadhrami, and he says, look, are you going to be happy to take a few coins of gold for your brother? And then he stirs up his sort of brotherly instinct and says, look, is that all it's worth? We're all here to defend his honor, and you're just going to be happy with a few coins of gold. So then Hadhrami's brother, he stood up and he gave a passionate counter argument. Says, look, we have to go to war. Probably talked about how they violated the sacred month and what a good person he was, and we can't let this stand, and they broke international law, and they are terrorists, and they are this, they are that. So then he turns the tide, but you can see how even amongst the ranks of the Quraish army, they're not quite sure which way to go. One time they want to fight, the next second they don't, and then they're back onto fighting. Okay. So then, when Abu Jahl sees that his work there is done, he goes to Utbah, and then he squares him up in the face and goes, "Oh, Utbah, you have become a coward after looking at the army, and I swear that your lungs are filled with terror when you saw Muhammad and his men. By Allah, we will not return until Allah decides the issue between us and Muhammad." And then he turned around and he's saying this out loud to everyone. Utbah is not sincere in what he says. He sees Muhammad and his men, and they are mere fodder for camels awaiting slaughter, and his own son is there amongst them, and he is scaring you for his own sake. So the two leaders facing up to each other, so Abu Jahl and Utbah ibn Rabbiyah. So Abu Jahl confronting Utbah and said, look, you're only trying to get out of fighting because you're a coward. Not only are you a coward for yourself, you're worried about your son, because your son's on the other. Your son's a Muslim. Your son's on the other side, and you know that us 1,000 are going to easily slaughter them all. We're going to kill them all, and you're just scared that we're going to kill your own son, and that's the reason you're running scared. You're such a, language that we would use today. Lily-livered, coward, yellow-bellied, whatever, things like that. So really insulting to Utbah, publicly insulting. And again, he's really trying to wind up. He knows which buttons to press, and it worked, right? So then Utbah, again, this is all within the realms of the Jahiliyyah tribalism. So Utbah feels that he has been insulted in the ultimate terms, and again, this is something that he cannot bear, based on the bonds of tribalism, not on the merits of truth or falsehood, or good and bad, or weighing up the options. This is pure tribalism. So he flips and he says, he says, are you going to listen to this, chap whose backside is yellow, as in he perfumes himself, right? He accuses me of being a coward. He's the one who's living in the lap of luxury. He will now see who is the real coward. Okay, so from one moment being the pivotal change in the Stop the War coalition, he now becomes the foremost cheerleader for war. So he now says, look, you think I'm a coward? You're the coward. I'm going to prove to you I'm not a coward. I'm going to be the first one to fight. Okay, so again, although he was arguing against fighting, he was the head of Stop the War coalition, but that was purely from an angle of tribalism. So he was manipulated in that. Now he wants to fight to prove his tribal loyalty, to prove his tribe is better than the others. So then he calls on his brother Shaybah and his son, and then they march out for the duel, the Mubaraza. And in classical battles, your battlefield, your face-to-face battles, you wouldn't have an all-out battle straight away, like you may see in sort of Lord of the Rings or whatever. It would start off with a sort of gentlemanly duel, right, where the each side would send out some champions, not the leaders, but some champions, and then these champions duel themselves. And it's about morale. It's about pumping up each side or demoralizing the other side. And you can see that the Quraysh were in such disarray; they hadn't sorted out who their champions would be. So much so that it was Utbah who was goaded into fighting. He flipped, and then he says, "Look, I'm going to be the champion. I'm going to take my brother. I'm going to take my son, and we will show you who's coward and who's not." Okay, so then these three march out. So as they're marching out for the Mubaraza, Abu Jahl, he now knows there is going to be fighting, right? He's won over the people for his evil intentions. So then he makes a dua, and Allah records this dua, and Abu Jahl doesn't know at the time, but he's actually making this dua against himself. So he says, "Oh Allah, whichever of these two armies has brought more evil, cut the ties of kinship, and has brought the more unknown or the newer doctrine, religion, let them meet their death today." And on all three counts, Abu Jahl and the Quraysh are more guilty, okay, and they are cursed and defeated on each of those accounts. So, which side has brought more evil? Abu Jahl thinks that the Muslims brought more evil, but they're the ones, and as Allah says, they prevent people from worshipping Allah. They prevent people from accessing the Kaaba, right? They're idol worshippers, right? So these people have brought the more evil. Tick. Who have cut the ties of kinship? It's the Quraish which have exiled the Muslims. It's the Quraysh who've persecuted the Muslims. It's the Quraysh who have forced the Muslims out, and they're the ones who've cut the ties of kinship. It's not the Muslims who've done that. It is the Quraysh who've gone against their own well-established international law, and they're the ones who have exiled their own tribespeople, their own brothers, fathers, kith and kin. Okay, we talked about that during the story of the Hijrah. And whichever, so again, guilty on that account. And the third account, whoever has brought the newest or most deviant religion, let them meet their death today. And again, the Prophet, he's bringing the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is the original Tawheed. The innovation came with idol worshipping. So again, it is the Quraysh and Abu Jahl's ideas which are the innovation, the newer, more corrupt ideas. So again, he's condemning himself on all three counts, and he's making dua against himself. Okay. So again, we can see here in the build-up that the Quraysh are still uncertain. They don't want to fight, the majority of them, but the evil hard-heartedness of Abu Jahl, his singular hatred of the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims, tints everything that he sees. And he doesn't even listen to the voice of reason amongst his own people. Abu Sufyan says, "Look, don't fight. No need to fight. The caravan is safe." There's Akhnas bin Shuraik, who was the leader of Banu Zahra. He took back a quarter of the army because the caravan was safe, right? He didn't want to fight. And you've got Utbah and Hakim, all of these people saying, "Let's not fight." And these are senior people, but Abu Lahab, he stayed behind. He didn't come and fight for. We talked about possible reasons for that before. But these voices of reason, of wisdom amongst their own people, even though they're basing it on jahiliyyah, on kufr ideas, the outcome is still beneficial, right? But these voices of reason, these Stop the War coalition, they're being, the moderate voices are being pushed aside by the fanatical extremist voices of people like Abu Jahal, right? They gain the upper hand. They're the ones, who rile the army even more, because there is this innate sense in some of these people where they're just completely blinkered and anti-Muslim, anti-Islam. Okay, and again, for the sake of, for the purpose of the Badr, it worked in the favour of the Muslims, because the top leadership came and they were all virtually decimated. Okay, much like Battle of Badr, all the top leaders of Medina were decimated before the Prophet ﷺ came and took over. So here you've got the three people striding out for the Mubaraza. So we'll just sort of flip over and go over to the Muslim side now. As you know, and just sort of recap. The Prophet ﷺ, he's there in his headquarters, in his qamar, sort of trellis portico area, overlooking the battlefield. You've got Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, you've got Mus'ab ibn Umair, who's the flag bearer, who is the focal point for the Muslims, and he gains. He's got trust on both sides. He's Quraish and noble descent, but he's the one who converted most of the Ansar, directly or indirectly through him, and he is the focal point. So he has his own entourage protecting the flag. And then we talked about the other people in the Prophet. He's going to be lining them up in ranks. We'll talk about that in a second. We talked about how the whole night the Prophet ﷺ was making dua to Allah, right? Saying things like, "Oh Allah, if you destroy this group, you will not be worshipped on earth. If we fail now, Islam will be ruined," right? And then he was the one. The Prophet ﷺ was the one. He dozed off for a little bit, and then Allah sent him a dream where he promised success. And the Prophet ﷺ, he then woke up, and he was the one who woke everyone up for Fajr. He says, "Oh people, time for Salah," because they're all in deep sleep. And Allah references this in the Qur'an, the rain, the sleep, and he goes again in Surah Al-Anfal, when sleep overcame you, this was a blessing from him, and he sent down for you from the skies rain to purify you like a spiritual bath. Okay, and made your footsteps firm. And we talked about how the light rain had firmed their ground. And Ali refers to this and said, "Look, if only you could see us on the night before Badr, each one of us were like we were dead asleep. Sleep so sound asleep as if we were dead, except the Prophet ﷺ, who was praying behind a tree and making dua until morning." So, Ibn Masud in another authentic narration says, "Look, I've never seen anyone pleading, begging Allah more than the Prophet was pleading on the night of Badr." Okay, so this is, it's not just a lowly ask of Allah. This was actual pleading with, through his whole heart, and he's doing this not just of himself, but doing this as an example to us. Okay, and then so what did the Prophet see in this dream? Allah says, Allah showed them, as in the Quraish, to you as being small in number, and if he had shown them to you as big as they were, you would have despaired, but Allah protected you by not showing you the real quantity. So he didn't hide the whole army, he just showed a section of the army which the Prophet interpreted was the whole army. So he woke up positive, more full of energy because of that. Likewise, on the Quraishi side, they saw in their dream, and those that did get some sleep, they saw the Muslims as being larger than 300. So they had a bit of trepidation in them, even though the scout would say there's only 300. They felt that they were larger. So again, it's, psychological warfare that we talked about. So the Prophet, he's lining the Muslims up in ranks, okay, in lines. The tactic of the Arabs prior to the Muslims was that the tactic would be one of small groups, not normally small, tribal groups. They would attack in pulses. They would attack in intermittent, attacking or circling around, trying to ambush a certain part of the army and then retreating. So it would be cyclical. It would be, pulsular. So that's the way that they would conduct their warfare, and that's, how they were schooled in their art of warfare. Whereas the Prophet, he brought for the Arabs a new tactic. He would line the Muslims up, and later on, in this battle, they didn't have the javelins, the spears, the arrows, and the cavalry that they would have later on. But nevertheless, he would line them up in rows, as if and Allah refers to this in the Qur'an. He praises this form of fighting. So this was a modern tactic, and again, it had been used by the Romans and sort of the Greeks and other people, but this was again something that the Prophet he'd deployed for his army. So as sort of the Quraish are getting ready, and probably just before Utbah is trying to tell them not to fight, Prophet he's inspecting his own army, 313 plus lightly armed militia army. So he's straightening the rows as if it's time for Salah, and then he comes to one Sahabi who's out of line. He's standing in front of the line. Clearly, he's not in line. And so his name, I think, was Suath. So the Prophet gets his sort of stick or his arrow and sort of gently prods Suath back into line. Says, straighten up, Suath. Okay, so pushes him back with his stick or his arrow, and then instantaneously Suath, he goes, Ya Rasulullah, you've poked me, you've caused me pain without any cause, and Allah has sent you to be with truth and justice, and I demand justice. So, this is on the battlefield. They're squaring up to the enemy, and Su'ad is complaining to the commander-in-chief, look what you've done, you've hurt me. I want justice, I want to hurt you back. And again, this is unthinkable in today's day and age. If you had anyone talk, like that to the commander-in-chief, but Prophet instantaneously, he says, "Okay, fine, you have a point." He dropped his stick, and as he goes, I want justice. Prophet he lifted up his shirt and says, "Okay, here is qasas. Do what you like. You can. I've done it to you. I've hurt you. You can hurt me." So, without thinking about it, without getting upset, and without getting his intelligence people to drag him off to solitary confinement or sending him to the back or anything like that, he says, "Okay, fine, fair point. Here you go. It's, you can have your justice." So, at that, he bends down, hugs the Prophet's belly and kisses his stomach. So the Prophet, he's startled by this. Says, "What is this, Su'ad? What are you doing?" He didn't expect that response. So Su'ad then explained, and again, this was, you could see the way these people think, the way the Prophet thought, how he was with his troops, and how his troops were thinking one step ahead. He goes, "Look," Su'ad replies, "Ya Rasulullah, you can see the situation we're in. It's a dire situation. he didn't say that, but it's a dire situation. There's 300 of us, there's 1,000 of them, they're properly armed, we're not. You can see our situation, okay? So if I die, I wish that my last breath, or the last time that I do anything, that my skin touches your skin before my death. So, he's just very, this is a ploy that he'd come up with as he saw Rasulullah, straightening the ranks. He said, look, if it's the last thing I do, I want to touch the skin of the Prophet. Okay, so he comes up with this ploy, and he knows how the Prophet is going to react, and and so the Prophet, when he sees this, and Suath gets back into line, he makes a dua for him and asks Allah to bless him. And you're not going to get that happening with any commanders in chief, any presidents, prime ministers, kings or queens nowadays. They're not going to act like in that fashion. Okay. So at this point, with the sun rising, you can the Prophet sees Utbah. He doesn't know it's Utbah on the camel in the distance, talking to the Quraish army, and then he's been informed that this person is saying good. So he turns to the Ummah and he says, if there's any good in the Quraysh, it's in that person, and if they listen to him, they're going to be successful. So he calls out, "Oh Ali, call out to Hamzah and ask him, who is this man and what's he saying?" So we talked about what Utbah was saying, trying to get them to take the blood money and stop fighting, and then he gets and then Abu Jahl turns him against it, and then he marches out for the Mubaraza. So the Prophet, he's there praising Utbah, because if they were to listen to him, war would stop, even though he's talking from a non-Islamic perspective, a Jahiliyyah tribalism perspective. The outcome is to stop fighting. War is evil, okay, generally speaking. So if they were to listen to him, they would be successful. The process of saying that, but that's not what happened. So, then at that point in time, the process of he then makes another, oh Allah, this is the grace. They've come with their pride challenging you, and they've rejected your messenger. Oh Allah, your help that you have promised, cause them to be destroyed. And he said that 3 times, and as he's there lining up the army, he's telling the army there's an amnesty. There's certain people from Banu Hashim who should not be killed, and he names a few people like Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, his uncle, and Abu Bakhtari, and we'll talk about both of them. Of interesting things on the battlefield. Al-Abbas, obviously, he wasn't harmed. Abu Bakhtari, he was actually killed by an Ansari, but after he was told that he's not meant to be killed. But the Prophet, he still wanted to repay the favor of Abu Bakhtari in terms of, he said, look, these people, all of these people, they've been forced to fight. And Abu Bakhtari, he had some ability about him. He was the key instigator that stopped the boycott. We talked about the boycott where the Banu Hashim was exiled into the valley, but he was the one who would send the camel with food. He was the one who went around talking to people and plotting the public dissolution from the Quraishi side of the boycott. So the Prophet expressed instructions: do not kill these people, including Al-Abbas and Abu Bakhtari. And again, so not all enemies, even on the battlefield, are the same. So then we have the Mubaraza, and I'll probably just quickly go through that then. So the Mubaraza. So we've talked about the Utbah being riled up by Abu Jahl so much that he stomps out. He calls his brother Shaybah ibn Rabbiyah and his son Utbah's son Waleed ibn Utbah. He says, come on, we're going to be the duel, we're going to be the champions, we're going to fight. Utbah's son is Abu Hudhayfa, who's on the Muslim side, and we'll talk about him a bit later on. He said something in the heat of the battle once. once the outcome of the duel was there, that he wanted to strike at Al-Abbas, and also he was sad that his father and uncle had passed away. But anyway, we'll talk about Abu Hudhayfa later on, inshallah. So then the three march out for the duel. And so without time, the Prophet can't nominate anyone. Three Ansar, they immediately jump up and they rush forth, because Utbah saying, who's going to fight us, who's going to battle us? So the three from the Ansar are Auf ibn Afra, Mu'adh ibn Afra, so two brothers, and Abdullah ibn Rawaha. Okay, so the three of them immediately jump up, and Auf and Mu'awad, they are quite young. They're probably late teens, very young, but full of energy, and these are the two that actually eventually end up killing Abu Jahal. But we'll talk about that later. But you can see that they've got youthful energy and zest and determination. So they jump up, and there's Abdullah ibn Rawaha. So they come up to Utbah, and Utbah looks at them with disgust and says, "Who are you guys? I don't know you. I don't recognize you. You're just kids. My quarrel is not with you. We are fighting our own blood." So again, here you can see that in the mind of Utbah, this is purely about tribalism. He's not there, fighting a war of ideas. This is pure tribalism. We're here to fight our tribe. Who are you guys? I don't know you. You're Yathribi. I've got no quarrel with people of Yathrib. I'm here against Muhammad and Banu Hashim. So go back. And he dismisses them and sends them back. And he shouts to the Prophet ﷺ, "O Muhammad, send out our equals." Again, a very tribal Jahiliyyah attitude. So the Prophet ﷺ, he then says, "Stand up, O you Hamzah. Stand up, Ali. Stand up, Ubaydah ibn al-Harith." And so he sends out these three people. And as these three are coming, Utbah says, "Who are you?" And then, they shout out their names, and Utbah goes, "Yes, these are noble adversaries come to fight." So we all know who Ali is, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Hamzah ibn Abdul Muttalib, and Ubaydah ibn al-Harith. His full name is Ubaydah ibn al-Harith ibn Muttalib ibn Abdi Manaf. So the Prophet ﷺ, he is the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, known as Shaybah, son of Hashim, son of Abdul Manaf, son of Qusay bin Kilab. Okay, so Ubaydah bin al-Harith is the son of Muttalib, right? Who's the one who kidnapped Abdul Muttalib, Shaybah, who's the son of Hisham. Okay, so their genealogies are coalesce at Abd Manaf, son of Qusay, and so Ubaydah, although he's not Banu Hashim, he's Banu Abd Manaf, their sister mini tribes. So then the pairing off is Ubaydah bin al-Harith is obviously the slightly senior of them, so he pairs off with Utbah ibn Rabbiyah. Then Hamzah is with Utbah's younger son, which is Shaybah, and then Ali is with Utbah's son Waleed bin Utbah. So the Mubaraza starts, and then instantly Hamzah and Ali, they pounce on Shaybah and Waleed, quick duel, and they kill them straight away. And then Ubaydah and Utbah, they're clashing swords, they're fighting. These people in the late 50s or early 60s maybe. They're fighting, and Utbah manages to get the upper hand on Ubaydah from the Quraish, and Utbah, he slices off the leg of Ubaydah. So Ubaydah falls down, tumbles down to the ground, drops his sword, and then Utbah, he's then about to kill Ubaydah. Then, because Hamzah and Ali have killed Shaybah and Waleed, they at that moment, both of them pounce on Utbah and they kill Utbah. So so all three of the Quraishis from the Mushrik, they die. So Utbah ibn Rabbiyah, his brother Shaybah, and his son Waleed. And these were the people who were against fighting. They didn't want to fight, yet they were goaded into fighting. Pure Jahiliyyah. Much like how Abu Talib, he knew that the Prophet ﷺ was the Prophet of Allah. He knew he came with the truth. And he would have become a Muslim had it not been for this tribal bond, that his people would accuse him after he died. Okay, so it just shows how evil this tribalism is, this nationalism. Even it, affects our people today. So and you can see, how these people were treated. So and then Ali refers to this Mubaraza because he says that verses of Surah Al-Hajj were revealed and relating to this particular battle, where Allah says in translation, these two opponents, the believers and disbelievers, they dispute with each other about their Lord, and he goes, that's me, and he was on the right, and he was the one who was in the Mubaraza. And then so Ubaydah, he was carried back on the shoulders of Hamzah and Ali, and he died 4 or 5 days later from wounds inflicted here because his leg was cut off and he didn't recover, and then he didn't die on the battlefield. He died as a result of fighting on the battle, but a few days later. So next time we'll talk about what happens just after the duel, the actual fighting on the day of Badr. So we'll talk about the stories. We'll talk about the angels coming down. We'll talk about isolated incidents, and it's not chronological. It's just there's a series of stories that have been narrated about incidents that have happened on the day of Badr. So inshallah we'll talk about that next time. So again, if you have any questions, do email, do WhatsApp or on the website, and perhaps next time might do it face to face, because I probably won't be doing it from these lovely surroundings, this warm sunshine here. But anyway, until next time, do remember it in your du'as, and do get a chance to read around the stories and the Battle of Badr, because it is such a lovely story. It's such a monumental, beautiful story that Allah manufactured this meeting, and it has preserved this, and a whole surah was revealed about this. So it is a pivotal moment. It happened during Ramadan. We'll talk about whether they fasted or not maybe next time inshallah. But again, do remember in your du'as, and we'll finish there. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna al-insan fi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu s-salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.